It's time for Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. South Korea's Yoon administration has been actively pushing to revive the country's nuclear energy industry amid the ongoing global energy supply shortage and the global shift towards renewable sources of power. Now, last week, the new government raised the target share of nuclear power in the country's energy mix to 30% or more by 2030, raising its previous goal, and further moving away from the previous administration's pledge to phase out nuclear power. The Energy Ministry expects the move to not only benefit to boost the heavily fossil-dependent country's energy security, but also its economic prospects too, by increasing exports and fostering startups, as well as new jobs in the country. So we discussed the prospects ahead with SUH Kune-yull, Professor Emeritus of Nuclear Engineering at Seoul National University, and Jonathan Cobb, Senior Communication Manager at the World Nuclear Association. Now, very warm welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us. And for you, Dr. Cobb, very late time in London. Thank you for joining us. And well, my first question to you, Professor SUH, on the domestic developments that we've seen. Now, what are the biggest changes or developments that you expect to see with the new government set to expand the country's use of nuclear energy?
I realize indeed that nuclear power is making a great comeback, both home and abroad, and everybody's trying to seize the opportunities. Korea is one of them. And I think 11 years have passed since Fukushima accident, or disaster rather. But in view of the Russian invasion to Ukraine and all those other instability issues in the energy market, I believe many other countries are eyeing nuclear at the same time. And Korea is certainly one of them again, and trying to ride this tide as far as it can.
And Professor SUH, how much of the country relies on nuclear energy right now here in South Korea?
I think it's currently, it was, if my memory serves me, it was 27% last year in terms of power generation. And the current administration is trying to push forward toward 30% by 2030. So that's going to be a big boost.
And Dr. Cobb, now amid this energy supply crunch that the world is experiencing, do you think nuclear power is going to help with South Korea's energy security? Is it an effective way to go about it?
Yes, as the professor said, 27% of electricity already comes from nuclear energy, and that's looking to expand. And it was only last month that the Shin Hanul-1 reactor started up, and that's now supplying a large amount of electricity to the South Korean grid. And with every unit of electricity, that reduces the dependence there is on gas supplies, on fossil fuel supplies. It provides that low carbon alternative. So it is making a major contribution to energy security. And I think that is something that is going to continue into the future, both in South Korea and worldwide. And one of the reasons for that is that the same energy sources that are providing alternatives to fossil fuels from an energy security point of view, nuclear energy and renewables, they're the same low carbon electricity generation options that the world is already turning to at speed to try to aim for net zero carbon emissions by 2050.
And Dr. Cobb, how crucial is the use of nuclear energy in the mix of various renewable energies? I mean, how effective is it compared to other sources of renewables?
It's a very low carbon energy form of electricity. The amount of greenhouse gas emissions in the full life cycle, taking in account mining, manufacture of the fuel, construction of the reactors themselves, is of a similar low level as is the case for wind and solar. So it does make a very major contribution to reducing emissions. Another major benefit of nuclear energy, of course, it operates at very high regular output, so 24/7 constant output from the nuclear power stations. And that can help support generation from renewables, which in the case of wind and solar can be intermittent. So by putting the nuclear energy alongside the intermittent renewables, you can aim for a much lower overall carbon mix in your generation of electricity.
And Professor Ha, well, with the Yoon administration really pushing to expand the nuclear sector here, this is not only expected to benefit huge companies that build power plants abroad or export smaller reactors, but it's expected to benefit South Korean households as well. The government's hoping that this will create around 5,000 startups by 2030 and also create thousands of new jobs. And well, when are South Koreans going to start feeling the benefits of nuclear energy, and what kind of process needs to take place between now and then to really set up and broaden nuclear power generation?
I think it's a great question. First of all, by doing this, the fossil fuel import dependency on the Korean side will be downsized from about 88% to 60% by 2030. And second of all, Korea will be resuming again, as doctors pointed out, reconstruction work on Shinhanul units 5 and 6, actually 3 and 4 rather, and extending the operations of 10 existing nuclear reactors by 2030. Those might have been prematurely and basically permanently shut down in the previous government, but that has been turned upside down. Actually, we just made a U-turn. So second of all, also Singori units 3 and 4 are going to be resuming operation. Actually, and also Singori units 5 and 6 will be starting commercial operation sooner rather than later. So this will be really boosting to more portfolio as far as nuclear is concerned. And so certainly, but surely under a new president, Yoon Suk-yeol, Korea's nuclear industry will be going full steam ahead.
And Professor Ha, well, the nuclear power issue has been subject to a lot of political changes, and the previous Moon administration's policy of phasing out nuclear energy really didn't make sense to many scientists. And well, what have been the challenges of fostering nuclear power generation given the whole political back and forth over the industry?
Long story short, the national energy mix has to be based on science and technology and driven by economy and the market, and supported by the public in general, and also accepted by them. So it should never, ever fall victim to politicians, lobbyists, or activists. And that should not happen again.
And Dr. Cobb, how is the situation in the UK, for instance? Is nuclear power generation something that is quite political? And how do you manage to keep a balance between science and what the people want?
I think on the issue of what the people want, it's to ensure that when the nuclear industry has plans, when governments are putting together policies where they are looking increasingly to use nuclear energy as part of their environmental and energy policy mix, there is an absolute need to have dialogue with the public, with local communities, to make sure that they're fully engaged with what is being proposed, that they see the benefits not only in terms of the generation itself, but also the benefits that can result for local communities. Not only the thousands of jobs that can be directly generated if you have construction and operation of nuclear power plants, but also the follow-on benefits for local communities where that highly trained, well-paid workforce then is investing their money in local businesses, and you see local businesses all around nuclear power plants benefiting from that economic activity that they generate. In terms of the UK, there is actually good political agreement with both the current Conservative government and also the main opposition party, the Labour Party. They both see nuclear as playing an important role alongside other low-carbon energy sources in our energy system in the future. So at the moment, there are 2 reactors under construction in the UK, and there are proposals for several more to start construction over the next few years from 2030 onwards, as well as investment in new technologies such as small modular reactors. small modular reactors, there are a wide range of them, and they have different applications. So one of the most important things to do is not only decarbonize electricity, but also look to decarbonize other heavy energy intensive processes, like so industrial processes that require high levels of heat. You can't generate high temperature heat at scale from renewables. Nuclear is really the technology that is most applicable for doing that. So it is something I think that's recognized in the UK and worldwide as important for decarbonization, not only of electricity, but many other sectors.
And of course, as Dr. Kopp said, it's crucial to engage citizens and really heed their voices and also listen to their concerns and address them in moving forward. And Professor Seol, well, there's been a lot of concern about how nuclear waste is going to be disposed of. What are currently some efforts that are being made to address these kind of concerns?
Oops, this is a good point, because this is sort of like a Achilles heel when we're talking about nuclear energy. And dealing with the dangerous radioactive nuclear waste is an urgent and national matter, in fact. And in this example, I think Finland has the first of its kind deep geological repository site, which is about to begin operation in 2025, again, if my memory serves me. So that's a high example, but as far as Korea is concerned, I don't see any light in the end of the tunnel. And any attempt to expand nuclear power excessively without having the solution upfront is going to be a fantasy. So I think we'll have to do something sooner rather than later.
Well, hopefully the conversation will keep going and we'll start to see progress. As South Korea does work towards carbon neutrality, we are going to need a lot more options. And well, Dr. Kopp, now, how competitive are Korea's nuclear plant exports? The country's also looking to expand its exports of smaller reactors as well, which you mentioned earlier. So what really is South Korea's competitive edge in the global market?
Well, there are many countries and many companies that are now involved in the construction of new nuclear reactors, as they are being used increasingly worldwide, and there seems to be the need for a large expansion of nuclear generation worldwide. So I think South Korea has demonstrated its ability to export reactors through the plant that's been constructed at the UAE in Baraka, and that plant is coming online. The first 2 units of 4 have come online, so that does demonstrate a capability there. I think it certainly would be the case that any country that would be considering South Korea as a partner alongside all the other vendors that there are, it's going to be more reassured by the fact that South Korea itself is recommitting itself to new nuclear construction, to maintaining nuclear's role in the energy mix, because they will then know that South Korea is going to retain the skills that are so vital for both construction and operation of nuclear reactors. And that is something that certainly will be now a weakness that South Korea may have had with the previous phase-out policy, which has now been rectified.
And Dr. Kopp, while the European Union, the EU Parliament, they recognise nuclear energy and gas as environmentally sustainable energy sources, and they voted to include the two sources in the EU taxonomy. And that's, of course, a list of economic activities deemed green. So do you think this could give somewhat of a boost to South Korea's nuclear energy exports? And do you see more and more countries starting to adopt this kind of policy posture?
Well, I think that's the key thing. The EU taxonomy is something where they have looked at nuclear energy in particular in great detail. A scientific body, the JRC, looked at nuclear because it was considered separately from the other sustainable technologies that are in the taxonomy. And that study concluded that nuclear energy was at least the match of other sustainable energy sources, other sustainable technology. And that's why it has been included and now is recognized as being an appropriate use of sustainable finance. And that's important for Europe, but it's also important worldwide. And what I'm hoping now is that, having seen the rigor with which Europe evaluated nuclear energy, Other taxonomies that are being developed in different regions will also include nuclear in the same way. And we will see increasing investment from sustainable funds recognizing nuclear's role in a long-term clean energy future.
And Professor Seol, you being at the forefront of research in nuclear energy here, how do you see the country's potential in expanding its global market in terms of related technology exports?
Mm-hmm. I guess the leading edge is on the side of construction, because as I see it, Korea has the competitiveness in pricing. For example, it costs about $2,000 per kilo of electricity for Korea to build one nuclear power plant, whereas it costs about more than $4,000 for France and for the United States for the same job. So if you take these figures into consideration, it's just half the price. And I believe this is the world record. And as Dr. Kopp has already pointed out, we have proven the competitiveness in terms of the construction on time, on budget, without any delay. And I'm sure that Korea has really just met golden opportunities home and abroad. And just to add some of few words is relating to small modular reactors, because we're also developing a small modular reactor called SMART, and that has to do with the developing a reactor which may produce 300 megawatts of thermal power, as opposed to 3,000 megawatts thermal in case of large power reactors. So we might be dealing with this kind of economies of series rather than economies of scale, if we can rely on mass production in the factory. And then someday, these small modular reactors may turn out to be a game changer, so sexy that everybody may want to jump on this one of these days. So that's my hope. And then I really hope this may turn out to be a reality one some of these days.
Well, you certainly can't turn down a very good bargain, especially a very attractive one at that. And well, hopefully this will be a chance for South Korea to expand its exports abroad, not only in the Middle East, but also in the European markets too, with cost effectiveness, as you pointed out, Professor. Well, this is where we're going to have to leave the interview today, but that was SUH Kune-yull, Professor Emeritus of Nuclear Engineering at Seoul National University, and Jonathan Cobb, Senior Communication Manager at the World Nuclear Association. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.